Started. Dr. Tiwari is an associate professor at University of Maryland um, in the Plant Sciences and Landscape Architecture Department in small grains, genetics, breeding, and genomics. He received his PhD from the Indian Institute of Technology in Roorkee, India, and then did a postdoctoral research at both Oregon State and then Kansas State right before coming to University of Maryland. His grains breeding program is really developed rapidly, and it focuses on developing locally adapted cultivars that can thrive in our changing environment here in Maryland and in the region, of course. Today we're really excited. He has been doing an interesting project that was funded by in part by the Hughes Center for Agro-Ecology, and he's going to talk about enhancing resilience in Maryland using profitable Maryland Triticale cultivars. Thank you, Dr. Tiwari.
Thanks, Kate, for a nice introduction, and thanks, Josh, for this invitation, and thanks for the Hughes Center for this wonderful opportunity to work with you all. It has been very learning experience and a very exciting journey so far for me to develop two independent program. One is wheat breeding program and as well as Triticale program. So this is one snapshot of a couple of years back when we just started doing Triticale breeding, and you can see some variation in the head rows for Triticale cultivar in our program. So I'm going to start with a acknowledgement first for this wonderful person that we have in our team, Mr. Sidney Wallace. So for me, it has been an amazing journey, but at the same time, developing two independent program was very difficult for wheat and Triticale. And then Sidney came on board as a graduate student, and he has done an amazing job in evaluating the germplasm and helping with some crosses and looking at some phenotypic data, summarizing that data. So he definitely deserves a very special acknowledgement on that part. So if I ask you one question, how old a wheat, a rice, and those cultivars are, the answer would be about 10,000 years back. Those crops were domesticated and was started to use by humankind. But Triticale is a very recent cultivar. The first cross that was made for Triticale was in 1875 in Scotland. That was a failed cross. It was trial cross. Few years later, there was another cross that was made, and that basically gave us our Triticale. That's octoploid crop. So it's a man-made crop, and it combines wheat and rye. As you can see here, wheat was used in the first cross as a female and rye was a male, and it basically provide very nice tolerance to the acidic soil, salinity, drought, and winter hardiness, and number of diseases. So it's a resilient crop in a nutshell. Uh, Again, as I said, that it combines the best of wheat and rye. So here you can see that how the cross was made in the lab. Wheat was used as a female and rye pollen was used to fertilize it. And then the colchicine, a chemical that doubles the chromosome, was used to make triticale. So this kind of hybrid that is coming right after the cross is known as primary cross or primary triticale. Secondary triticales are the triticale cultivars which are available to us. These are crosses derived between the triticale itself. So because you see the combination of two different crops, two very different and unique crops, the wheat and rye, that's why Triticale brings some good traits from both of the world, and it makes it as a multi-purpose crop. When you look at the Triticale production across the globe, and here I am strictly talking about the grain production across the globe. So Poland leads the world with about 1.3 million hectares. That's about 2.6 to 2.8 million acres in acres. And then here you see that 10 top countries that produce triticale for the grain. One thing that you will notice is even for the grain production, how much variability we have. You see some triticale that is coming from Germany. The yield percentage is almost double of rest of the places. So this is kind of diversity that exists in triticale germplasm and that we see here too. So overall, globally, triticale is grown for 10 million acres, mostly for the grain. uh, in US, triticale was mainly grown for animal feed, and very recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's also gained a momentum as a crop for cover crop purposes as well. And it has been become very popular as a forage and cover crop in eastern region and southern part of the southern Great Plain and West Coast. So official data that is coming through some papers that says that about 1 million acres of triticale is planted in USA for cover crop and dairy purposes. But seed companies and our discussion with a lot of seed guys, they say that at the number goes to 2 to 2.5 million acres across the USA. So so Triticale already has a very strong footprint in US, and it has the potential to become one of the important cool season crop for USA. So that's where we are trying to basically focus our research to make it a more significant crop for the cover crop, forage, and related purposes. So when you look at the future of the triticale crop, right now the in 2025, the total monetary value of the triticale production was about $586 million across the globe. So this is the estimate that comes through this particular organization. Um, Sorry, I missed the modern intelligence. It suggests that Triticale has a huge potential to improve its presence in US, and cost productions are positive towards its future as well. So when we look at the triticale, we say that it's a multi-purpose crop, but what makes it as a multiple crop? First of all, it brings best of the trade from wheat and rye. And what are those? Wheat and rye both have very good winter hardiness. Rye has very nice high nutrient uptake, biomass production, and good forage quality. And you can see triticale in your breakfast and cereal ingredient list as well. It has overwintering qualities. It produces high biomass. It has as good as nitrogen scavenging properties as rye has, and it does a very good job in suppressing the weed. So all these traits together basically put triticale in the high bracket for as a multi-purpose crop. So if you divide triticale into multiple facet of the crop uses, you can see that it's soil erosion control, weed suppression, nutrients scavenging, and biomass production put it into the good shelf for the cover crop and soil health. It has one of the best grazing potential in the crop plants, and it has high quality hay and silage, and forest quality is also very high. So that makes it a very good forest crop to help feeding the livestock. And Triticale brings good trade from A genome and B genome of wheat for bread making, and it has high fiber content in its grain, so it's healthy, also considered as a healthy food. And in Europe, triticale has also been used for ethanol production and biorefinery applications and distilling and brewing as well. So you can see that triticale basically qualifies for multiple segments, and that's why it is labeled as a multi-purpose crop. So again, when we look at the comparison of triticale versus wheat across the region, this one study came from UK where they looked at 16 different fields for multi-year experiment, and they wanted to see that how triticale is going to be doing against a high performance wheat in different atmosphere under similar nitrogen conditions. So what they found that almost in all tested condition, triticale outperformed wheat under similar nitrogen regime, and its yield performance was very stable. So what you're seeing in this graph is that dotted lines are wheat, and the solid lines are triticale. And these are coming from 8 different monuments in this graph. So you can see that triticale's performance with respect to wheat under same nitrogen regime is better than wheat in almost uh, all the conditions. And again, here the comparison is maybe not between best wheat and best triticale varieties, because there's not a very efficient triticale breeding program anywhere in the world. So that means triticale varieties, old triticale varieties are being competed with the best performing wheat. Similar study came from Poland, where they look at 15 winter wheat cultivars and 18 winter triticale cultivars in 52 locations. And what they found that triticale's performance under high or moderate input conditions was very stable, whereas wheat's performance was highly fluctuated with the change in environmental condition. Last experiment that I want to show you is coming from a Mediterranean region, where they worked with the triticale as well as wheat, and you can see the data from 9 years data that triticale is outperforming winter wheat in the yield component in all these years consistently. So that means that provide very strong value proposition to focus some studies on improving triticale cultivar as a resilient crop and a future solution uh, if we look at all these changing climatic conditions. And one of the key components that is unique to our region because of the Chesapeake Bay is that cover crop potential. And rye is known to squander the nitrogen and nutrient very well. So how triticale performs, again, here we are not comparing the best triticale variety that is in our hand. We are talking about some of the old triticale varieties. And you can see that triticale is on par with rye in most of the cases. For example, you are looking at erosion control for triticale and rye, very similar stats. Nutrient scavenging, again, rye is doing a little bit better. In weed suppression, rye is better. We know this fact. And same thing with the soil builder. But in all other traits, the triticale is either better or matching rye. So that means triticale has a very good potential to become a cover crop of choice, a cool season cover crop. One of the problem is with the rye is that it does not volunteer well, but triticale is doing great with that as well. So with all these factors put together, what are the challenges for triticale improvement? Because if we really want to compare some of the top quality wheat cultivars with the good quality cultivars or really triticale cultivar, then those comparisons have some value. So, but in that particular process, we have a lot of scientific challenges. First of all, as of now, we don't have very well adapted, highly fertile, high performance triticale cultivar, uh, at least to our adapted to our region. And there is no systematic research on triticale improvement that is focusing on all those four facets that we discussed, right from the cover crop to bioenergy crop potential of the triticale. And there is a lot of genetic diversity exists in triticale, but because we are not being systematic about that, we are lacking the knowledge how to exploit that knowledge. And we see some studies here and there about cover crop potential of the triticale, but it has not very well explored from that perspective as well. And one of the limitations that Triticale has for its grain and use quality is that its grain quality or grain components are inferior with respect to wheat and barley. So these are some of the scientific challenges. And again, it is highly susceptible to fusarium head blight. That is one of the key components for grain production in this area. And ergot is one of the bigger problem for Triticale as well. And we don't have any till date we don't have any locally adapted triticale cultivar. And the in the broader prospect, we look at the why triticale is not so well received in US, because market acceptance, it has huge potential, but smaller market when we compare with the other cereal crops. And because of limited market access, it's difficult to get the a significant portion of the market share. And superior trade care quality that are coming from some of the industry partners, their high cost of the seed basically restrict their uses for forage or cover crop. So we were exploring all those options, and then we are very thankful for the Hughes Center for awarding this project, where we came out with the three very well-defined goals to look into some of the issues. First one was to development and test the new Maryland Triticale cultivar that we are developing for cover crop purposes and yield factors components, and running the large-scale state and regional trials to select best performing critical cultivar and evaluate them for forage, yield, and other component, and then increase the seed and making them available for the release in the state. And this was a stepwise goal to make some crosses to look at the lines in the field, and then selection, and then the release the cultivar. So again, because I'm also working on other small grains, so whatever strategy I have used and optimized for wheat and barley, we have used very similar approach. We came and talked to our stakeholders to develop a well-informed breeding goals, what we need to do with the triticale, and based on that, we define our breeding objective, and then and use the genomic data sets and fast tracked it for cultivar development uh, pipeline. I will explain that in next few slides. But for Triticale, the focus was to improve the cover crop performance, disease resistance, biomass, yield, grain yield, nitrogen use efficiency, and forage value. So we basically build upon this project based on multiple years of data that we earlier generated on Triticale. So here what you are seeing is this dendrogram that shows the unique Triticale cultivar for various traits that we identified for based on the genetic diversity and phenotypic evaluation. So this is one example where we look at the disease resistance in triticale. We basically evaluated our germplasm that we showed into that wheel in last slide for fusarium resistance. And we found that out of our entire collection, we started with about 800, 900 diverse triticale accession. And we found that 200 were very, 292 accessions was very uniform. And out of that, we found that 4 or 5 accessions are showing better response to the scab resistance. So we basically started crosses of these resistant accession with some of the Maryland triticale lines, and we have deployed that. So what you're saying in this graph is that fusarium head blight severity in these accessions. So you can see that about 6 to 7 accessions have less than 40% of the disease spread. Some of them has about 10 to 15%. So these were our top priority accession to basically introduce that gene in our breeding program. And this figure shows the DON, the mycotoxin that is produced by the fungus, lines that we have selected also are showing very low DON content, and that makes sense in a way that is we have some of the genes that provide resistance against spread, and some of the genes that basically reduces the DON content. In some accession, we have both of them. In some cases, we have one or other. So these allowed us to select the lines which are providing disease resistance. And then over Sydney has done 4 years of work to look at the nitrogen use efficiency of triticale under different N regime. Like in some cases we have no nitrogen application, and in some cases we have half of the nitrogen, standard nitrogen that we provide to cereal grain, and in third case we have full nitrogen application. And then based on that, we selected, based on the 3 years data, we selected some of the accession that can be used into our breeding program as parental lines. And here you can see some of the lines that we selected based on these data sets, where half of the nitrogen application is providing equivalent yield with the full nitrogen application, because that would be one criteria that we consider as making plants more efficient. So this is some of the example where you are looking at uh, the stat test where we are looking at some selected plants at no nitrogen, full nitrogen, and half nitrogen. So focus was to select the lines which are doing better under half nitrogen regime. So by combining the plant biomass, plant height, and root biomass, we selected some of the lines that you can see here, we can be used as a parental lines in our crosses. And then we are also collaborating with the uh, our collaborators at UC Davis, who are basically focusing on improving the grain quality. So some of the lines that they have identified with superior grain quality based on the bread making, protein test, and yield evaluation, we started making crosses to improve the grain quality of our triticale sections as well. So this is a very busy slide, but again, that shows that how we are picking some of the lines which are showing positive allele for a number of different traits. So these are our set of about 82 lines that makes our crossing block, and they have been selected based on their performance for disease resistance, heading date, and nitrogen use content. And so that means whatever critical we have phenotyped, and also based on our genotyping data, we came out with this pool, and that was used to start process. And we are looking for all these traits: biomass, nitrogen use, yield, scab resistance, and forage value. So once we have the parental stock, then we get into a very long time cycle, because if you're looking at wheat or triticale, that is winter wheat. So in winter, when you make a cross, then you go to summer, you grow it out. So up to you go to the F6, you require at least 6 winters. That means 6 straight year, and that is very long time to develop a cultivar. So if we go through this cycle, traditional breeding cycle, we are talking about 9 to 10 years to release a variety. That's too much time, and you guys will not fund us for that. So that's why we implemented speed breeding in our Triticale program as well. So in this case, from F1 to F5, we take in just 1 year by just cheating the plant with 22 hours of light and increased temperature. So we call it speed breeding, and it is basically a very key approach for fast tracking the breeding cycle in our group. So just to simplify it, what we are doing here is, if we are not using speed breeding, then we are basically looking at the large scale field test in the 8th year. But what we did here, after making our crosses using integration of double haploid and speed breeding approaches, we cut these 4 5 years and we started right here. So now we are going for the large scale field testing into 2 to 3 years. So that has allowed us to develop high quality germplasm very quickly. And then when we have the germplasm, then testing is very critical, because whatever we want to develop a program that basically help Maryland growers and stakeholders, but it should also have presence in the Mid-Atlantic region and across the nation as well. So first critical step in that particular process is to test your lines for adaptability, yield content, disease, and quality traits in different environments. So these are some of the established collaboration that we have as a wheat breeder with our regional partners. So different dot color shows different name of the nurseries that we run with the different states. So we use this particular partnership to test our lines in all these regions, and which was very useful. And then we also have a very key partnership with the company known as Northern Star. They are also very supportive of our program. Through this collaboration, we test our emerging and new scale lines across the US in 12 different locations. And that robust data provide us to look at the adaptation or adaptability of our lines in different regions. So based on all these metrics, phenotypic data, and adaptation scores, and genomics enabled breeding value, every year we plan to select 10 best lines. So here is one example where we are looking at 10 best lines that will be basically going into the large scale test for their release and further commercialization. So again, I am not showing you the Maryland data because Maryland data is in my hand and I can be really biased. But here I'm showing you some of the data that is coming from our industry partner, Northern Star. They are testing the lines in different locations. So this is one example that's coming from Indiana at Bluffton location. So you can see that one of our critical line, TAL 4, is basically top performing line or ranked one line in that test. And then this is another location from Wichita, Kansas, where our 3 TK lines are in top 10. So that means the lines that we have developed has been showing the potential to adapt to the broader geographic locations, and they are going to uh, probably that show that they can be successful in this particular endeavor. But this is one test. Remember, we are talking about the cover crop potential for the triticale, right? And this is showing the yield data. That is pretty good. But how the lines are doing for the cover crop performance? So we did perform test it for the forest performance. So here you are looking at so the grainer and progress and aviator, these are the commercial check coming from the different industry partners. So you can see that our couple of lines are top ranked in 3 different groups. Here you're looking at the early lines. Here you're looking at some medium lines and some of the late. I have just put some of the representative accessions here. So you can see that these lines, remember TR5 was also present in the previous slide that did really well in Indiana. So these lines are showing very good forest traits as well. So based on all the data, we selected about 5 lines which are showing very high yield potential and very high forest traits and also other cover crop traits. So we have selected them and now we have been increasing them for seed purification and their release. Uh, and if everything goes well as planned, then probably we will be releasing a couple of these cultivars, or these all will be available for release next year in 2026 by summer. So these are some of the examples where we are talking about uh, following the traditional and integrated genomics integrated approaches, but we are also collaborating with our friends and colleagues across the globe. And this is one example where George Dubkowski's group at UC Davis, they perform gene editing in Triticale, and basically they by tweaking one base pair of the of one particular gene, they have reduced the plant height. So what you're seeing is that this is the tall triticale line that has fallen over because of the lodging, and this is the improved line where just one base pair was changed using gene editing. So we are now working with this team to basically incorporate some of the our traits in the gene editing pipeline so that we can improve that quickly. So again, what I'm showing here is work in progress. I'm hoping that I will get a chance to present next year when we have a lot of very exciting data. But what we have seen in our 3 to 4 years of work, that there's a huge potential to further increase the triticale acreage and presence in US, especially in our Mid-Atlantic region. But it can only be done through adopted high performance cultivars. And I think we are on the right track in making those cultivars available to our stakeholders. And as I said, that we are waiting for this year's field data to make some advancement and release decisions. And we are very, very hopeful that next year we will be releasing triticale cultivar for our stakeholders. Uh, we are talking to Josh that we should plan a Triticale field day event at Classville, maybe in first week of June. So highly, I would request you to come and see how your funded dollars are helping the growers to hold us interest in the field in Maryland, and then. one of the important component of the program is to train students, and there are a number of students that have been helped and trained through this particular grant, and I'm really thankful for that. Uh, Support from Hughes Center is was very important for the toward the meeting the goal of the project and the program, but also some support came from Northern Star, Grain Producers, Crop Improvement Association, and NIFA. With that, I will stop here and thank you all, and I would be very happy to answer any question if you have.
Thank you very much, Vijay. That was really interesting. Uh, those of you online, if you would like, you can raise your hand and we'll make sure to call on you. Or if you'd feel more comfortable and would rather, you can put your question into the chat and Josh will help me keep track of that and read them off. So um, feel free to ask your questions. And I'll start off here with one, Vijay. So you mentioned that it was really interesting seeing all the different uses of triticale. What states is it grown most extensively? And kind of along with that, are there other breeding programs for triticale in the U.S. and where are they located?
Yeah, so right now the most acreage that we hear is coming from California and West Coast. So those areas are the prominent areas, and they also use it for forage and feed. In eastern part of the US, triticale is being used as a cover crop, and there are a lot of growers in Midwest. They are basically using triticale as a cover crop now, but these are not documented acreages, and that's why probably because triticale is probably not included in the insurance program, or some other factors are responsible for that. But all the seed uh, people, they tell us that actual acreage of triticale is much higher than what is reported. So that is one thing. There are a couple of breeding program in the state. One is in Nebraska. Earlier, Stephen Benziger was the breeder who started the triticale breeding program there. Now, Catherine Frill is leading that, and it is so exciting to see that earlier there was two, me and Catherine, but now there are, for example, Illinois has hired a triticale breeder, and Louisiana has started doing triticale breeding just last year. And then Florida has started doing some triticale breeding. So there's a lot of interest coming up in triticale breeding. So yeah, and then there's a company, Tricale. They have interest in triticale breeding. They're doing pretty well.
Interesting. Yeah. So we were at the forefront. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Um, are there any questions, Josh? If not, I've got another one while we're waiting.
I see one in the chat here. Will the lines be released as public lines, or can the seed be saved to replant?
Yes, I think um, I wish I can answer that question. That's straightforward. But I would say that there are interest from our side to release at least one triticale cultivar as a public cultivar. I think Hughes Center has funded this grant or this project to make triticale cultivars available publicly. So we would like to do that, but we would need partners who can basically condition the seed and take the distributions to next level. So answer is that, yeah, we are highly interested in releasing at least one triticale cultivar as a public release.
Thank you. That's all I see in the Q&A for now.
So to give folks a chance to think of any other questions, can you say, so you mentioned that the California group is working on gene editing to produce a shorter stature um, um, triticale line. How would that affect its potential as a cover crop? Is that, it seems like that is reducing the biomass in that way going to make it less valuable as a cover crop, or has anyone thought about that? It's probably relatively new variety or cultivars, right? So maybe no one's looked at that.
Yeah, one of the problem with the to manage the triticale and also the case of rye, that's it gets very tall. If you add a little bit more nitrogen, start falling over. So I think if you are tweaking just one gene, then maybe you are reducing the height by few inches, but it may not be affecting the biomass much, because biomass comes in the picture when a lot of stuff is going to get mobilized to the grain. So as long as usual plant type is not going to get affected, it should be okay. And that's what I think, that's they published that paper in plant biotechnology, and they have reported that it does not negatively affect the plant biomass.
Interesting. And do they primarily use it for cover crop in California, or is it used for nutrition or like a food source?
Their focus is for forage and food source. So they are, that's why they are such a natural partner, because they are not competing with us with the cover crop aspect, and they are basically adding new value. So we had a NIFA grant led by George Dubkowski, where he really wanted us to be part of that, because we had this scab resistance, which is very important from the grains perspective. And we wanted to have some of the access to the editing technology so that we can also tweak some of the genes to our purposes.
Thanks. We have another question in the Q&A. Could you speak to the expected cost of the seed compared to other cover crops?
Uh, I would say that I'm totally blanked here, but I think if you are looking at the cost as with respect to rye, right? Rye is one of the most competitive entity for triticale as a cover crop. So you most of the rye that is coming to US is coming through Canada, right? And so there's a cost that is associated with the transport and seed production. So if we have locally developed triticale cultivar, which is locally conditioned, so I feel that cost is going to be comparatively in either smaller or similar.
Mhm.
So again, I am sorry, I haven't looked into that in greater detail, so I don't have answer for that, and I don't want to say anything that is wrong.
Sure. We appreciate the answer, though. I'm not seeing any other. Kate, do you have any other follow-up questions for Dr. Tiwari?
No, I'm good. This was really interesting. When this project came before our board, I can give a little history here. Our board was very interested in it. We had one farmer on the board at that time who used triticale as a cover crop and was definitely a champion of this particular project, saying the value that it would have for Maryland agriculture. So we are very appreciative of the work that's being done.
Thank
We
you.
we actually just got two more questions in as you were saying that, so I'll just start with the top one if that's okay. Do you start your breeding with rye and wheat parents or existing triticale varieties? Are the triticale lines you are working on winter dormant or non-dormant types?
Okay, I think I would say this that probably I have one of the largest well-characterized triticale collection in US, if not in world. So first 3 years, I would say wasted or invested in basically finding the line which is winter hardy and winter type. So we do have in our collection lines which are spring type, facultative as well as winter type. But I could not manage facultative and spring type. So I basically removed them from the cultivar development program. And if I start, I have made some crosses where I have new triticale varieties coming in by making those crosses with rye and wheat. But they take years and years to get stabilized. So we started making crosses with the stable triticale lines. So that's why I would say that these are secondary. The crosses were started with the secondary triticales. So that's why they're very stable.
Oh, great. Thank you. Another question. Are there countries such as Poland, Belarus, Germany using triticale more prevalently as a food source rather than as cover crops? So similar to the California question. And then do you know if breakfast cereals and breads note high percentages of triticale on labels?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, in Poland and other places in Europe, triticale is a grain crop. So because of the marginal soil and conditions that they have, it's mostly a grain crop. Uh, so there's not such a strong concept of having triticale as a cover crop in Europe as of now. Uh, so I think so. What was the second part of the question? Sorry, I missed it.
Oh, sure. Do you know if breakfast cereals and breads note high percentages of triticale on labels?
So there is triticale bread, and there are mixtures of bread where triticale flour is being used, right? So there's one component that we are trying to focus on triticale bread. So there's a compound that is known as scalin, right? So if you eat rye bread or triticale bread, you get this very specific strong texture that basically is somehow considered as a negative. I like it, but some people don't like it. So idea that we are having right now is just edit that gene. We know the location of that gene now. So if we can edit it, then probably we can take care of that particular texture, which is probably making some people away from the triticale. But beside that, triticale has 75% of the wheat. So triticale bread is, I think, very much included in bread. I don't know how much included in the U.S. market, but if you go to European supermarket, you will see loaves of triticale bread there, triticale or rye bread there. So, but here some of the specialty uh, places you can find triticale bread as well.
Neat. Um, and then one other question. Do you know, or is this something that needs further investigation, if triticale is tolerant to saturated salty soils, such as like is they're experiencing on Delmarva?
That is, I was talking to one of the collaborators in Europe, in Germany, in fact, and what he was saying that if you think through it, like triticale as a silage or triticale as a silage, so triticale has a very good phosphorus uptake efficiency. It takes a lot of phosphorus from the soil, and when you make silage you are removing it, right? In cover crop you are basically chopping it back to the soil, so you're not removing it. But for soil and other purposes you are basically removing that, and you are using it for forage and silage purposes, so you are kind of removing that part. So in that particular land it can be used an option to remove phosphorus. And the number, if I'm not mistaken, he was saying that one season 50 pounds an acre or something. I again don't, I will read it again. And so if I remember correctly, it was 5 or 50 pounds per acre or something. The number was very uh, exciting. So I would read that paper and get back to you. But I think it has efficiency. It is an efficient crop for removing phosphorus as well, if you look at the silage or forage option.
Okay, thanks for that. And then just one comment in here from an attendee says that Nice Farms Creamery in Federalsburg is using triticale for grazing and hay. So if you're unfamiliar with them, could be a good person to reach out to
Okay.
Dr. Tiwari. But
Okay. I will.
and we can help facilitate that.
Yeah, please.
So I think that's all the questions I see for now. Kate, do you have any final words?
No, well, I would just like to thank you again, Dr. Tiwari, for this great work and the presentation. This is, exciting to see this breeding program going forward in Maryland, and um, a breeding program that's going to focus on local crop that's important to us right here, which is really neat to see. So we very much appreciate it, and we appreciate your time in explaining the work to us. And we look forward to maybe next year getting to see some of these in the field. And do you have a date for your? You mentioned there was going to be a field day at Clarksville where you would showcase some of these. Do you have a date for that yet?
I wanted to talk to Josh first about it, that what date works for best for the calendar and for the board and other people. So I think June first week is pretty much open for us. And I can put any date to what works for you.
So yeah, so for our participants, we will capture your names and make sure you know when that date of that field day will be, so that if you're interested in attending, you would be more than welcome to come and attend and see firsthand what some of these cultivars look like. And thank you again.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Josh.